don't take my word for this. Please, I admonish people, study it for yourself.
Right.
The person who founded Vanguard is a man named John Bogle. He's written many books. He's a great proponent of the small investor. In fact, he actually left the company he started, which was Vanguard. He actually started as an MBA thesis, I believe, and said, I'm going to go do this. But he left the company. He's become somewhat of an advocate. And the way he teaches this is something every investor should investigate for themselves, in my humble opinion. It's called the law of compounding costs. And the way he states it is he gives an example that I cite often of a worker who's, say, 20 years old. And they look at an actuarial table and say, okay, he's going to die at 85. So the mutual fund company is going to say, all right, that's 65 years of investing. We can get his money. How do we do this? Let's say they take, he starts with $1,000 and doesn't add to it, just $1,000. And he throws it in the stock market and he gets maybe 8% a year. Well, the power of compounding is something else. I mean, that is over 65 years, that's going to wind up a little over $140,000. That's the power of compounding. The problem is that's if he gets the 8%. Now, that's what they're getting. Behind the curtain, it's growing at 8%. But if they take fees, let's say they take 2%, 2.5%, that means that on his statement, even though the money's actually compounding at 8, he's compounding at 5.5. And in that same time period, he won't have 140 grand. He'll have 30.
Wow, makes that big a difference?
$110,000 goes to the financial system, $30,000 to the worker. He takes all of the risk, puts in all of the money. Wall Street takes none of the risk, puts in none of the money.
It gets most of it.
They get the lion's share. That's where the money goes. It goes in the pockets of Wall Street.
So first, that's startling.
Yeah.
The 2.5% that's taken translates into the lion's share over time of the upside. But most people, the attitude is, well, why would I go in for? Well, I'm putting money in tax-free. They're still going to pay tax at some point, but the fees become another form of tax.
What's interesting is the fees, they've gotten better as competition's gotten better. But when people work the numbers, they'll still see that the lion's share go, and it's silent. You know, it's interesting. If I were to ask you how much you pay for your phone bill, you could show me.
Right.
If I say, what do you pay for health care? You'd say, well, here's an aspirin for $75 at the hospital, and here's how much my insurance will cover. If you go get a massage at the end, they say, this is your ticket. But when you ask people what they pay for financial advice, no one can tell you that number.
Wow.
It's that stealth. And yet it's something we do every month, every single paycheck. They cannot tell you what they pay for financial. They can tell you if the price is right, what a gallon of gas is, what a carton of milk is. They cannot tell you what they pay for financial advice.
It's kind of like, well, if I put money in the bank, I just watch the bank balance. So that's what they feel like they're doing. They're just watching a bank balance, not understanding the dynamics that are going on around their money.
I'm glad you brought up a bank balance, because this is one of the bigger lies I feel they sell. Most of this legislation is passed in the name of us not saving enough money. As a matter of fact, even some of the reports call this as savings. Nothing could be further from the truth. There is such a large difference between investment and savings in terms of the way it works and the risks involved. It's night and day. For example, if I save money, I put in what's called a deposit. I take some money, I hand it to the bank, and they go put it on the shelf and lend it out to people. But when I buy a mutual fund, they're buying stocks. I'm a purchaser of an equity. I'm in the equities market now, most likely, or the debt market. And so it's much different than having cash and having an inventory. Because think about this. In a savings account, you earn interest. Minuscule as it might be, you're still earning interest. But in a mutual fund, you're paying fees. You're paying. If you want that money, and this is important, if you want that money out, you simply go make a withdrawal. I would like my money back, please. But if you want to liquidate investments, you have to have someone to buy what you're offering. It's entirely different than savings. So think about this. I have a saying that if you want to see the future and have a crystal ball, policy and demographics gives us the future. So you bring up a great point with savings and investing, because think about this. One of the provisions in the 401k, and pretty much all across the board in retirement plans is the government wants that tax eventually.
Right.
And they need it, believe me. They need that
Yeah.
revenue. One of the things they weren't counting on was the massive participation in this and the fall in tax revenue. They weren't ready for that. That's why in the Reagan years, they tried to kill it. They tried to say, hey, we're losing all our tax revenue. So they had to build in a point where they would pay taxes. Now think about this for a moment. Many people are angry with Obamacare because they're mandating, they're making you do something. They're
Right.
making you spend money whether you want to or not.
Right.
You should be able to choose whether you want to do something or not. What's worse than making you buy something that you don't want? How about forcing you to sell something that you do want? So at age 70 and a half, that's the magic number, you are put on what's called a distribution schedule where you are required. Notice the cutting edge of the word required. This is not a suggestion or a plea. You are required to liquidate those assets on a schedule in order to pay those taxes. Now think about this for a moment. You have 79 million baby boomers in the United States, probably another 15 million in Canada under the same thing. When those people, they're hitting the 60s now. When they hit the 70s, when you have 79 million people having to push the sell button at the same time,
Oh, yeah, it's going to tank the market.
who do you have in mind to buy all that stock?
Right.
China going to buy it? Would you if you were them?
No.
And so you have a demographic of millions and millions of people that are going to be forced to sell